Something strange is going on in the background of some of Van Gogh's most famous portraits. What you just saw were recreations of Japanese woodblock artist Utagawa Hiroshige, done by none other than Vincent van Gogh. Yes, those are all Van Gogh paintings, and the last two are direct copies of the master of Japanese woodblock artwork, Utagawa Hiroshige. Van Gogh didn't just copy Hiroshige a couple times. He was inspired by his work, and his appreciation of Hiroshige transformed his style and aesthetic to what we know and love today. He even went so far as to change the shape of his eyes in this self-portrait, in his own words, to resemble a Japanese monk. Now let's take a look at the more subtle influences artists like Hiroshige had on Van Gogh. Take a look at this self-portrait of Vincent van Gogh from 1886. Now take a look at this one from 1889. What you're looking at is the before and after effect of exposure to Ukiyo-e, the Japanese woodblock printing technique that used vibrant colors and detailed textures so intricate you'd expect to feel their bumps and waves when you run your hand over the print. Ukiyo-e is not a realistic portrayal of reality. It's not meant to be. It's meant to convey beauty that only the mind can see. Sounds a lot like Impressionism. And it is, only it came before Impressionism, over 200 years before. Van Gogh was an Impressionist. He used oil and acrylic on canvas, not woodblock like the Japanese at the time. However, Van Gogh was so inspired by Ukiyo-e that it forever changed his style and even his subject matter. But Van Gogh wasn't the only one. Monet, Whistler, Degas, Tissot, Cassat, Toulouse-Lautrec, Gauguin, Bonnard, Klimt, Manet, and Childe, just to name a few. Much of the Western world has forgotten the names of the Japanese artists who inspired these incredible works. My hope is that after watching this video, there's one name you won't forget. Hiroshige. Hiroshige was a mid-19th century woodblock artist who mastered the Ukiyo-e style, which was popular in Japan during his time. Ukiyo is a Buddhist reference to the illusionary nature of the natural world, and e signifies picture. Put together, pictures of the floating, fleeting world. I got that from a book. This book, which I read in research for this video, but this isn't a book report. So let's get into what makes Hiroshige so special, so I can show you his masterpiece, 100 Famous Views of Edo, or as he would have called it, Meisho Edo Hyake. Edo Japan, 1590. A guy named Tokugawa Ieyasu arrives in a marshy village in southwest Japan. You may know it today as Tokyo. After a bloody campaign, Ieyasu becomes shogun in 1603 and begins rebuilding the local castle and developed Edo into a political powerhouse. In 1657, disaster strikes and 100,000 people tragically die, and the city is razed to the ground in the Miriki fire. Out of the ashes, Edo rose in a well-organized and rapid rebuilding, and in less than 70 years since its near total destruction, it became the most populous city in the world, with over 1 million residents in 1720. In Hiroshige's time, it had become a cultural juggernaut, with over half of the city's residents being merchants and craftsmen. It was a period of great wealth, peace, and art. Bridges were going up all over Edo, as fears of invasion were far from everyone's mind. In 1853, an American Commodore, Matthew Perry, shows up and demands that the shogunate open up their harbors to trade with the outside world after more than 200 years of virtual isolation. They must have really wanted to get their hands on some of those sweet Hiroshige prints they had heard so much about. At first, the shogunate refuses to speak to the Americans. Perry leaves to return a year later, and the two sides gradually warm up to each other. During the negotiations, the Americans decided to sweeten the deal by throwing in a barrel of whiskey and a miniature 1/4 scale steam locomotive set, which, after some whiskey no doubt, several members of the shogunate and high-ranking samurai rode around a circular track. Pretty strong negotiating. The Treaty of Kanagawa was signed. However, initially this was more of a symbolic gesture, and it did not lead to immediate change in Edo, Japan. But many Japanese were outraged by this deal and felt that they were being forced into the treaty due to the military weakness of the shogunate. Funds were quickly reallocated into military rearmament, and a period of uneasiness and fear of change ensued. Hiroshige's 100 Famous Views of Edo was created in the middle of this uncertain period in Japanese history between the isolationist Tokugawa dynasty and the period of rapid industrialization and globalization that followed. The impact of this uneasiness can be seen by the keen observer of Hiroshige's work. Defensive military ramparts in Edo Harbor, high walls, imposing castles are all seamlessly blended into the cityscape so subtly that these prints were able to pass through the shogunate's meticulous censors, who needed to approve each and every one of Hiroshige's works before they could be released to the general public. There's only one depiction of Hiroshige in existence, and you're looking at it. This portrait was done by one of his pupils after his death from cholera in 1858. It reads, "With a tear-drenched sleeve." Not much is known about Hiroshige's early life. However, we do know that he started his career as a fireman, a position he inherited from his dad, but was less than passionate about. He left his firefighting job in 1832 to commit himself fully to his painting, his true calling. One thing is clear about Hiroshige. He loved painting and saw it as his duty to capture the beauty of his beloved Edo. Hiroshige's passion for painting is nowhere more apparent than on his death poem. On the way to the east, I lay down my brush. The goal of the journey. The famous places of the Western paradise to see. Hiroshige. Hiroshige speaks of his life's work painting the beauty of the world around him, and even references his final work, 100 Famous Views of Edo, when speaking of the famous places of the Western paradise of the Amida Buddha, a heavenly land inhabited by gods, flowers, fruits, and even wish-granting trees where rare birds come to rest. This is where Hiroshige hopes to be reborn. It's difficult to gauge the scope of Hiroshige's legacy in exact terms, but we know for certain that it was not contained by the borders of the mountainous island in the Pacific he called home. Hiroshige painted shashin, or reality as one would see it with their own eyes. Shashin, however, can be interpreted similar to the idea of Impressionism, or rather painting the essence of a scene coupled with emotion, sensation, sublimity, rather than a simple photographic representation of a scene. In this way, Hiroshige was like your favorite impressionist's favorite impressionist. Not in the rigid art history sense of the word, but in the way Vincent van Gogh would have seen him. Ukiyo-e experienced a sharp decline in quality and popularity following the deaths of the masters Hiroshige and Hokusai. If you've made it this far, congratulations, we're about to dive into the long-awaited masterpiece that is 100 Famous Views of Edo. Here are some final notes on what to look out for that I hope will lead to a greater appreciation of his art. Hiroshige was actually one of the first ukiyo-e artists to use the Western technique of linear perspective to show the perceived size and distance between objects, giving his art an almost three-dimensional quality, at times giving the illusion that you can actually reach out and touch some of the objects printed in front of you, while others feel far away and you begin to lose sight of them in the distance. Hiroshige was an innovator when it came to color, using vibrant colors and subtle gradients known as bokashi, which add volume and light to landscapes and skyscapes, but most dramatically and famously, waterscapes. With bokashi, rivers and lakes appear deeper and colder in the middle where there's movement, depth, and mystery. Skies are not stagnant, monochromatic backdrops, but they can tell you the exact time of day, weather, and general ambiance of the setting. Yes, that's a turtle on a rope watching the sunset. No further questions. Bokashi was a game changer, and combined with his creative linear perspective and strikingly beautiful choices in subject matter, Hiroshige had become a cultural icon and remains to this day. I hope that background on Utagawa Hiroshige helps you to better appreciate this next segment and gives you a sense of gratitude for the ingenuity, craftsmanship, and dedication of the master of ukiyo-e, Utagawa Hiroshige.